afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me all? Can you all hear me? Great. Awesome. Before I start talking about myself, I would quickly like to thank Kirk for giving me an opportunity to come here and talk about some of the key security concepts. I think this is a great initiative, and you have done a great job in organizing the event. And I'm absolutely pleased to be here and talk about authentication, authorization, logging, and alerting. About me, who am I and what do I do? My name is Anu, as he introduced, and I work as a lead security specialist at Vodafone New Zealand. I've been with Vodafone for 4 years now, and is it not audible?
I think it is.
It is? Okay. So, yeah, I've been with Vodafone for 4 years now, and I'm not a pen tester, I'm not a hacker, I'm not a coder. I own some of the technical security solutions at Vodafone, and I design solutions. It could be any solution, and my job is to make sure that the solution I deliver is secure and complies with a security standard as requested by our customers. I put different hats every day. My job varies. Sometimes I'm a pre-sales. Sometimes I do solution design and architecture. Sometimes training. I do engineering as well. I've got 16 years of experience in IT security, and as I said before as well, I don't do hacking or pen testing. I do everything else in IT security except for that. And I work a lot with security appliances that do firewalling, intrusion prevention, web filtering, email filtering, proxying, VPNs, endpoint security, etc. I work really hard, and I put my heart and soul into whatever I do. And this year, my efforts were recognized as, and I was recognized as one of the finalists at Women in ICT Awards all across the country in New Zealand. So that was a big achievement for me. And thank you. So I'm a mentor too. I'm actively involved in running a cybersecurity meetup called Project Wednesday New Zealand. I pasted the link for the meetup in the slides. These slides will be available to you later. So please feel free to join and register yourself. It's absolutely free, and we've received great feedback from all the people who've joined us so far. And I'm also active on LinkedIn. I would say I'm hyperactive, to be honest. I put everything on LinkedIn, and I like to share information with everyone as much as possible. So please feel free to register yourself and get access to people who actually work in the industry and can help you to build your careers. So when I'm not busy working or mentoring, I love to spend time with my 2 beautiful daughters. One of them will be a teenager next year, and I'm just trying to make the most of it before she starts ignoring me once she is a teenager. So about my journey into the world of security, I'm a computer engineering graduate. I completed 4 years of computer engineering from Pune University in India. And as part of the engineering, I was introduced to a subject called computer networking. I'm talking about year 2001. Internet was fairly new, and I was like totally fascinated by the world of networking, and I wanted to understand more about it. So I had to do a seminar as part of the final year, and I chose to do it on virtual private networks. I had no idea what it was. I had never read about it, but I don't know why I chose that. So as part of the research, I got introduced to the concept of communication and network security, and I was really intrigued by that. And I thought, I have to do something which has got to do something with computer security. But things didn't happen as I had planned. I completed my engineering in year 2001, and that's when September 9/11 happened, and there was a global recession. People were being laid off, and no one was entertaining freshers, so that was a very challenging time for me. But I had to do something, and I took a step backwards, and I applied for a job at Cisco, sorry, not Cisco, at Compaq Computers. So I started working as a technical support for them. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I had a vision, and it was a stepping stone for me to get to where I wanted to be. So I started working as a tech support. It was definitely very boring because I wasn't learning anything, and all that I was doing is taking calls and helping customers fix their desktop-related issues. But in the back of my mind, I always wanted to do something in computer networks. And Cisco was quite popular then, and I came to know about a certification called CCNA. It's called Cisco Certified Network Associate. I saved some money. I enrolled myself for the training, and I completed my training, appeared for the exam, and I managed to clear it. And I applied for a job in Cisco, India, and I managed to get the job. That was life-changing for me. While I was being interviewed, I told my interviewers that, I would like to do something in security because I've always, I already have done a little bit of research on VPNs, and they moved me into Cisco's security team, and that was, I think, the best thing that's ever happened to me. So working for Cisco, I got extensive exposure to Cisco security appliances like their firewalls, VPNs, concentrators, routers, switches, etc. It was a very demanding job, really, really demanding, because I would work on P1s and P2s where the customer's network was down, and they needed to fix it in like maybe 15 minutes or half an hour. So very demanding, but within a very short span of time, I learned quite a lot. So after kind of mastering most of their security products, I wanted to learn more, and I thought, let's go out and explore what else is available. So I applied for a job at Colt, City of London Telecom. I worked as a security analyst, and within a very short span of time, I learned quite a lot, moved into security administration, followed by a senior security analyst role, and I got moved from India to UK, and I worked in London with my teammates based there. So it was a great experience for me. And while I was working there, my parents said, oh, you need to get married. So that I got married in year 2006, and my partner was based here in New Zealand. So I had to leave my job in London and move to New Zealand to be with him. And I was lucky enough because I had a good experience. I got a job with Unisys New Zealand and worked as a network and security engineer. I was still doing a lot of network and security related stuff there, but I wanted to learn more. I wanted to know what else is available out there in the field of information security. that I can do. And I moved to Spark, New Zealand. I worked as a security assurance manager there, and I learned about compliance, risk management, security assurance within a very short span of time. I worked there for a couple of years and then moved to Vocus, New Zealand. Vocus is one of the third largest telco in New Zealand, and I worked there as a solution architect, network and security. And finally, I moved to Vodafone a couple of years ago. It's been 4 years now, and I worked there as a cybersecurity specialist. Most of the people think security is just about hacking and pen testing. I have a different opinion about that. There's a lot in security that you can do. If you don't want to be a hacker or a pen tester, that's all right. There are other options to choose from. I'm just quickly going to show you about various services that are available in our portfolio. Security monitoring. So Vodafone offers 24/7 security monitoring. We've got a SOC team that works 24/7. It's based in Auckland, Sydney, and Brisbane. Darktrace. Darktrace is an automated machine learning cyber defense tool. It's very popular with big organizations here in New Zealand, like banks, government agencies, etc. WAF is Web Application Firewall. We partner with Red Shield Security to deliver that service to our customers. Device security is mobile device security. Third-party VPNs using IPsec primarily, or any other protocol that a customer would want to use. Remote access for remote access connectivity. Firewalls, who can do without firewalls. Endpoint security, secure email for email filtering, secure web gateway for proxies, web filtering, URL filtering, etc., and CASB, which we've added lately to our portfolio. So today I'm here to talk about authentication, authorization, logging, and alerting. And it's really hard to explain these concepts by just talking. So what I thought of doing is, I thought of using my latest project as an example and explain how I incorporated these concepts into my design. So this project took us like 9 months to complete, and it's literally impossible for me to get down into details here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about these things at a very high level, but I'm happy to talk about it in detail after I finish this presentation. So at a very high level, some of the factors that I had to consider for designing this solution. Oh, I didn't talk about the solution, sorry. So my project was about doing a solution architecture and implementation for a secure web portal for one of our customers. So this customer was MSSP, Managed Security Service Provider, and they had a requirement for their customers to be able to log into this portal and view the status of the services they had purchased from them. They wanted to see ITSM tickets, what was the status of the tickets. They wanted to know about reporting. They wanted to know about the security posture of their organization. They wanted to see their firewall policies, etc., through this portal. So there were various components involved. There were a couple of web servers running the web application, databases, collectors, back-end connectivity to the log and monitoring system, and centralized firewall management system, etc. So at a high level, some of the factors that I had to consider are as following. Zoning, it's a very important concept. I had to make sure that I had defined appropriate zones where I would put each server for logical separation. High availability, for continuity of service. What if one of the hardware component breaks? How do we ensure that the continuity of service is maintained? Geodiversity, yes, to make sure that we have resiliency against catastrophic events and natural disasters. Access control for identification, authentication, authorization to make sure that the systems are protected. Visibility, very, very important. Requirement to comply with the security standard. Backups to make sure that the service could be restored if if the server was lost or something catastrophic happened. Time synchronization to provide frame of reference. DNS and internet connectivity, there was a requirement for servers to connect out to the internet and download the updates from the vendor portal or vendor cloud service. Management connectivity, very important. You have to think about management connectivity so that the administrators can log in and manage the environment. Security assurance, very, very important. We don't do it ourselves. We engage with third-party companies who do code and design reviews and pen testing for us. So authentication. Authentication is not a new concept. It's been there forever, I would say. We authenticate ourselves multiple times in a day. Every time we open a door with a key, we are authenticating ourselves to the building by simply demonstrating the possession of a key. Or every time you go out and shop, you use your card and you're simply authenticating yourself with the possession of a card and a PIN that you know. Or when you're traveling, you use your passports for authenticating yourself. So in order to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the solution, I had to ensure that I had appropriate authentication, user identification, and authorization mechanisms in place. And I had to start thinking about how do I uniquely identify each user. Do I use a unique username or a unique customer identification number, etc.? And it's very critical to think about these controls right at the beginning when you're designing the solution, because if something goes wrong, anyone can connect to your solution, to your web portal, make unauthorized changes, or execute shutdown commands, resulting in loss of service. And I will lose my job too if that happens, which I don't want to happen. So authentication methods. In order for a user to confirm their identity, the user must provide some piece of information that only the user and the system knows. This information is called authentication factor, and there are 3 types that I'm aware of. Knowledge factor. Knowledge factor is something you know. For example, a password or a PIN number, or maybe an answer to a secret question. Possession factors. Possession factor is something that you possess. It could be a hard token or a soft token. Some of the popular ones are RSA, 40 tokens, physical tokens, etc. Inheritance factors means where you use the biological characteristic of a user to authenticate. For instance, fingerprint scanning or face recognition. So single-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication, because everything is getting complicated and new threats are getting introduced. So everything has to evolve as well. When I started my career, it was all about single-factor authentication. So single-factor authentication is where you use one of the types mentioned above. So you could either use a knowledge factor to authenticate, or maybe just the possession factor, or maybe just the inheritance factor. The problem with single-factor authentication is that it can easily be defeated. Multi-factor authentication is where you use a combination or all from above 3 mentioned. This is more robust. So what did I choose for authenticating users to the solution that I was working on? We have to maintain a balance. So I went ahead with TwoFactor, which was a knowledge factor plus possession factor. Why? Of course, it's more secure and offers an extra layer of protection. But you need to be very careful. Just because you are doing two-factor doesn't mean you are delivering 100% secure solution. An attacker can still manage to break or jump over the authentication step by either stealing your token. What if they steal your token and you've got a weak knowledge factor as a factor for authentication? They can also launch man-in-the-middle attack or try to steal your information using real-time phishing attacks. So you got to remember that whatever factor you choose, both factors have to be strong enough. They have to be robust enough so that even if one is compromised, it's really hard for the hackers to guess the next one. So some of the password security principles I enforced and made users were aware of is using a password policy. So on the authentication server, we enforced the usage of password policy, and we made sure that they were using strong passwords. So my policy dictated the password should be at least 16 character long, with a combination of uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and numbers. Password expiry was set to 90 days. And password reuse was strictly prohibited. We also encourage the users to use unique passwords. So, for example, it's not recommended to use same password everywhere for your banking or for paying electricity bills or for Gmail or whatever you use, whatever web service you use. Also, you shouldn't write your passwords anywhere, and we also suggest the users to use a password manager to store their passwords. Is authentication enough? No, definitely not. Authentication doesn't talk about the access rights of the users, and that is something we definitely need to consider. So how do we solve the problem of knowing about the access rights of the individual? So how do we answer the questions like, are you allowed to do this task? So this is where the concept of authorization comes into picture. Authorization is a process of the authentication used for determining whether a user who tries to access any device, data, or execute has the permission to access that device, data, or execute that command. So in simple words, you may have users who need full administrative access to the portal to be able to manage it, and you may have a user who just needs to log into the application to view logs or to do analytics. So you definitely want to think about that. The user attributes are passed on to the user as part of the authentication request. It's all transparent to the end user. One of the very important concepts about access control is we strictly adhere to the principle of least privilege. Principle of least privilege is the practice of limiting access rights for users to the bare minimum permissions they need to perform their work. So in my scenario, I had to create various user roles to ensure the principle of least privilege was followed. So I had to strictly restrict super user account to a very few service provider administrators. And for customers, I had to create a read-only role and restrict their view to very few widgets. Also, I created customer administrator roles who had access to all information related to the customers, but had no access to the system configuration because a customer shouldn't see what's configured at the system layer, etc. So at the end of the access control design, I had delivered a solution which was two-factor. There were unique user roles defined for each function, and the good news is that we passed the security review with no remediation work required, which is really good because all the companies want to keep the costs involved with remediation to as low as possible. The next topic that I'm going to talk about is logging and alerting. It's a very well saying, if you can't see it, you cannot manage it. So every day your network is exposed to new vulnerabilities, new threats, and there isn't a lot we can do about it. There's always someone somewhere researching and working on a new malware to exploit your asset somehow. So the key is to identify the risks as soon as possible and take an appropriate action as soon as it's detected. So logging is very important. Why log? A business definitely wants to know about the security posture of their organization. So if you're not logging, you wouldn't know anything about what's happening in your network. And if you don't know, that's a really dangerous thing for any business. Accountability. For auditing purpose, we want to make sure that any changes being made to the network are all legit changes. Incident management, very important for incident management too. Once an incident happens, there's always investigation done after that, and how that incident happened, what was the cause of the incident happened, that's when you need to go back to the logs and understand why it happened and what do we need to do in future to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Forensics, yes. System monitoring, very, very important for system monitoring too. I want to monitor the usage of maybe disk or CPU or memory to make sure that my service is up and running. What if it goes? What if the CPU utilization goes like 90% or 100% and no one is monitoring it, and the system goes down, resulting in loss of service? So very, very important to log. Establish baselines. You definitely need to know what's the baseline in your network or in your organization, so that if there are any deviations, appropriate planning can be done to resolve those issues. Capacity management, very, very important. We need to make sure that we have enough capacity to sell. Especially for service providers like us, we always need to manage our capacity so that if we get new customers, we've got enough capacity to provision a solution for them. Log management plan. So just logging is not enough. Logging generates a lot of noise, and sometimes too many logs are not good. So you need to have a proper log management plan and make sure you have a clearly defined set of activities, and you have a clear definition of what needs to be logged. We don't want to log everything either. So you also need to consider what logging device is best suited for your environment. What's the log retention policy? So for how many days do you need the logs to be available online, offline? When do we send them for archiving, etc.? So plan for future growth, implement a remote logging solution. That's what we did for the portal design. I had to I had to build new remote servers in 2 different data centers, 2 different parts of the country to make sure all the logs were going to that logging solution. From the log server, all the logs are forwarded to our state-of-the-art SIEM solution for event correlation and alerting. As I said before as well, just logging is not enough. You have to configure appropriate alert messages that will notify of activities that are important. So SOC analysts can't keep constantly looking at all the logs. They have to be alerted on something, and then they take appropriate action once they've been alerted. NZISM, I don't know if you guys know about it, but NZISM stands for New Zealand Information Security Manual. This is a government standard, and I work, quite a lot of my solutions are used by government agencies, and I had to make sure that I follow NZISM principles for that. So as per NZISM guideline, the following events for all software components must be logged. Logons, so every time a user logs on to a system, that must be logged. Failed logon attempts, log-offs, date and time. Any privilege operations, if someone is doing a privilege operation, that must be logged too. Failed attempts to elevate privileges. Security-related system alerts and failures. System user and group additions. Or if someone is trying to modify the permissions, that must be logged too. Unauthorized or failed access attempts to systems and files identified as critical. So I pasted the link to the document. I would encourage you all to go and have a look at it. It will give you a rough idea about NZISM guideline. Monitoring and alerted. Once we decided what we needed to log, we had to apply appropriate rules so that the analysts working in SOC would get alerted on it and follow appropriate action. So we also call SOC as Vodafone Cyber Defense Center. So all events and incidents are managed by them. And I don't deal with this side of security at Vodafone, but we have got experts sitting there, and they constantly look at big screens where they are alerted on maybe incidents or any issues. So for instance, in the first picture, they would click on that circle, and it will show in detail what's getting blocked and what needs to be done to make sure that they fix the issue. The other one on the right side is just for an example as top 10 applications. You could also choose top 100, and they would know what to expect in top 10 applications as a baseline. And if there's any deviation, they would definitely start investigating. For instance, if they see there is a new application, maybe whatever application, they will start investigating and see why has a new application popped up. So this is one of the screenshots that I managed to get from them. So they get a view of a screen like this. So this one shows top 10 incidents, and this is a demo one, not a real one. This is a demo portal screenshot, and it does show like top 10 incidents, and there's a top one that's a P1 brute force. This would have been generated as part of testing, and then they would log on and see what's going on, who is trying to brute force, and what do they need to do to fix the incident. So that was me. Thanks for listening. I know this is not a very interesting topic to talk about, but I didn't have a lot to choose from, and I hope, I hope you guys would have enjoyed it. And I'll be around. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. And Project Wednesday, again, we would love to have more people coming and listening to the talks. If you are thinking about career, very important to network. So please join the Cybersecurity Startup Meetup, and I'm sure it'll be a great decision for you. So thank you very much. Thanks again for giving me this opportunity. You guys have a lovely day. Cheers.